In March 2024, Teddy Stein and Xena tested positive to a trace of a banned substance, anabolic steroid clostebol. But eventually he was cleared of any wrongdoing. Now also note this, Yannick Sinner was world number one as at the time this happened, but he was cleared of all wrongdoing on the basis that it was skin-to-skin contact with his physiotherapist. So he didn't consume the substance to enhance his performance, but someone had it on them and then it got on his body and, got into his system. Well, you can imagine the uproar this call caused in the world, in the athletes' world. Many people, including Carlos Alcaraz, spoke against this. And of course, this brings the question, or who determines what is considered acceptable or what is considered deviance in sports. Hi, I am Jim Francis Wenze, and today, from the critical theory lens, I will be discussing deviance in sports. Silva et al. 2023 extensively discussed deviance in sports in their academic work, The Criminology of Sports, talking about how power play determines what is considered as wrong or right in sports. And we see this, a lot. Governing bodies, associations, or even sponsors have a lot of influence and often define what would be considered as acceptable behavior or deviance in sports. And often it has a political undertone or sometimes leaning towards their cultural interest. A practical example would be, many businesses from Middle Eastern Muslim countries would not sponsor an athlete, who is known to have a drinking problem. And you see, in that way, they have started indicating or reflecting that behavior is not acceptable to them, which would mean that also governing bodies would dance towards that because they want to keep the sponsors who keep bringing money to the sports. Also recently, the International Olympic Organizing Committee, IOC, banned transgender women from participating in some women's sports. And of course, this was on the grounds, the ruling was on the grounds that this is unfair to biological born women. And you begin to wonder, is this also fair to the transgender women? So from these examples, I hope we can clearly see how the same behavior or the same set of rule violations can lead to multiple outcomes depending on who is being judged or who is judging. That's to say that high-profile athletes are sometimes treated better, while organizations and the people who have the power to make these rules also make the rules to serve most times their personal interest as against the athletes. And the critical theory is highlighting not only the inconsistency in how these athletes are treated, but also the key important thing, which is the system that brings out these rules, trying to say that it sometimes or most times it is not based on a particular thing, but just merely serving the interests of the organization or the individual that has the power to make the rule. And so ultimately, it is very important that rather than focusing on punishing violators of these rules, we should actually challenge the system and be sure that fairness is to all concerned rather than serving the interest of a few. So today, when we ask who is benefiting, of course, it's the governing bodies. And when a rule is made, it shouldn't be about who is violating these rules, but in the first place, is this rule fair to all concerned? What is the basis of this rule? And should it even be a rule in the first place? Maybe in a couple of years, who knows, another IOC will come up to tell us that transgenders are back in the game. And that's why it is very important that the rules are made on a solid foundation as against the whims of an individual. Thank you very much for watching.